Good evening, everybody. At this time, please silence your cell phones and be advised as proceedings are being recorded. Those physically present in the council chambers who desire to address the city council during the meeting, please complete the request to speak form available at the front entrance and present it to the city clerk. Speakers physically present and participating via Zoom will be called upon at their appropriate time, and each person is allowed 3 minutes speaking time. This time we'll call to order and convene the regular council meeting Tuesday, February 14, 2023 at 6 p.m. The invocation will be given by Pastor Rex Arnold from Centerpoint Church, and Jeff Allen will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand and bow our head for the presentation.
Good evening. Please bow in prayer with me. Father God, we come before you tonight. We who believe in you and we who do not, God, we come together in order to do the business of operating this city, God. We believe that this is a great place to be, Lord. We thank you that you have given it to us to live in, Lord, and we pray that you would be here with these deliberations tonight, God, that you would allow each person here to give grace to the others, that you would grant wisdom in deliberations, and that you would guide these proceedings. Thank you for your sacrifices, Lord, and your generosity. We love you. It is in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Rex. Appreciate it. Appreciate you driving all the way out here in the rain. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Allen. All right. City Clerk can call roll call when you can.
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Henderson.
Present.
Councilmember Robles.
I'm here.
Mayor Hussey.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson is absent. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have any recording or additionals or removal of items from the agenda?
No additions or removals.
All right, so tonight we're going to begin our special presentation, certification and appreciation for the Santa Claus Toy Drive presented by Johan Gallo. Mr. Gallo, can you take the form?
Good evening, Mayor. We have a short video that we're going to show, and then I'll give a quick presentation, and I'd like to present a plaque to the city. Well, as you can see, it was a good success, and I again want to thank Mayor Hussey when he supported us as Mayor Pro Tem to let this program to continue. We also want to thank the City Council for their support, and now our new City Manager, Conrad Bolowich, and Senior Planner, Ms. Heidi Aguirre, who have been successful in helping us streamline this whole process so that we can continue doing this on an annual basis. We couldn't do this without the support of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Lieutenant Lane and the deputies that were there to help us. San Bernardino County Fire Department Assistant Fire Chief, Chief Cerna, and Captain Aguilar, not to mention the Grand Terrace Lions, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and all the businesses that partnered with us. In the conversations that we had with Kathy Braxton, who we do this for, and she runs Sick and Tired Recovery Home for moms with families who are struggling, and also for Community and Unity with husband John Braxton. The Toy Drive Cruise generated so many toys with our efforts through not only the cruise but the collection locations, that they were able to serve over 150 families and made a better Christmas for those families. We appreciate the collection locations of Grocery Outlet, Woody's Grill, Stater Brothers, which has now added 3 other locations beyond Grand Terrace. Bert's Jewelry Store was the first for this year, and they definitely filled the box and some more. Each have continued to grow the number of toys that they collect, and then Sarah Canella, owner of Mazzulli's, has decided that they want to be a collection center next year as well. We added something new this year where the citizens of Grand Terrace could vote on which car was their favorite in the cruise. And we had 3 winners, and thanks to the support that we got from Woody's, Mazzulli's, Loudburger, and Old Alberto's, all 3 winners that took the top 3 spots were given gift cards and certificates. We keep growing this event because of the outpouring of support from the community and from the city and the staff. And so we're looking to do something a little different next year. I've been working with the mayor. He'd kind of like to see the old days when we used to do a parade in Grand Terrace. And we're looking forward to working with the staff and seeing what we can do there. We definitely want to keep the toy drive part of that. We don't want to lose that with everything that we're doing, because we want to continue supporting the families that need this type of support during the holidays. So at this time, I'd like to give a presentation of a plaque to the city. And if we could, I'll ask the city clerk to take a picture for us. But I'd like the city council and mayor, and also invite Lieutenant Lane and Assistant Fire Chief, Cerna, to come up for the picture. Thank you.
Before we do that, John, Councilmember, have anything you want to say? Councilmember Allen?
Sure. I think I've watched your parade go by my house every time you do it. I love it, and I'm so glad that it's growing to the point where I think that's the best thing I've heard so far all year, is this desire to get the old Grand Terrace Days parade going again. I look forward to that. Thanks, John, for shotgunning this whole.
Thank you.
Councilmember Robles?
Yeah, I want to thank you too. It's volunteers like you that add to the specialness of living here, the amenities, and I'm all in for the parade too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson?
I'd like to thank Mr. Gallo in particular. He's bashful, but he is the driving force behind this activity and many others. The only other comment I'd like to say is they didn't pick one of my cars, so they got that part wrong. Thank you, Johan.
You need to step it up, man. We need some lights on that thing.
I want to concur with Councilmember Henderson. Thank you, John, I remember when you first did it 3 years ago, it was a thought, and come a long way. And then there was a time where the city really needed it, being during the COVID pandemic, and people sheltered in their house, and people just coming out there and showing the love the community has. That's what this great thing about this small little town, everybody supporting. And it brought, a sense of the community together, getting them out of the house. And then bringing in the Christmas spirit. So thank you, John, for everything you've done for this city, and, continue to work on it to make it even better every time. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and
All right, we get
appreciate the continued support.
everybody get their picture.
Yeah, I know, it'd be nice to be, would you?
Something we don't know?
Well, I couldn't come always building my tree. Now a gal popped up. Which is what, rooster?
Yeah, Worcester. And my sister's husband's name is Worcester, so we always tease him.
Thank you, John. Okay. So the item C, consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They'll be acted upon the city council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of the item of the consent calendar for discussion. So do we have any public comment for the consent calendar? All righty. Do we have any public comment or anything from anybody from the public want to remove an item?
We have a public comment for item number 6.
Okay, I'm going to remove that anyway, so.
Bobby
Councilman Allen,
Forbes.
you have a. Okay. 5, 6, 9. Sylvia, you have anything you want to pull? Ken? You have anything you want to pull on the?
I was going to ask for 6, but it's already been pulled.
Okay. So we're going to pull item 5, 6, and 9. Do I have a motion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8?
I'll move to pass those items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 by Councilmember Allen and a second by Councilmember Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so item 5.
Thanks, Mayor. Item 5 is the report on the changes to the fire severity hazard zones for Grand Terrace and Reach Canyon. And so the reason I had this pulled was I wanted to ask how this impacts those homeowners who have now found themselves in the high-risk hazard area and high-risk area. And is there anything that can be done to reduce the risks to help the homeowners with their insurance cost?
So as far as the impacts, if you get into the expanded area, and it really is, the expansion is a relatively small area, your fire insurance costs will go up. Those are areas that are designated as a high hazard area based on terrain, wind patterns, historic fire activity. So your insurance will go up. I'm sure that the chief can speak to defensible space. I mean, these are all urban wildland interface areas, so it's important that we keep defensible spaces around our homes, keep clear area, that as we keep brush and debris away from the house, make sure we don't have firewood stacked up against the house, those kind of things. That if we're building a new home, that we make sure that there's procedures and things put into place that help reduce that fire exposure. So it really is more of an as-built than some event you're going to take or some activity. But keep the area clear, keep the things that'll burn down, keep pine needles off the roof, kind of basic common sense, maintain your property, and that helps lessen the risk.
So I appreciate that, Mr. City Manager, but some of the areas that have fallen into this high-risk area are bordered by other neighbors. I mean, not by wildlands and not by anything like that, only by someone else's lot. And I'll give you an example. I live on Brentwood Street, and on Brentwood Street, from Mount Vernon, the first, 6 homes on the north side of the street are in a high fire hazard, but the other side of that's the senior center and the park and other people's homes. And so these homeowners are saying, where's the hazard at and the risk that causes my property here, but that house next door to not have the risk, and everything behind my house is also behind that house. Stuff like this.
Actually, I went through this argument a couple of years ago at my house, and I'll relay the answer I got from the CAL FIRE fire marshal, and is, first, it's not just the house that abuts the wilderness. It goes 2 or 3 houses deep, because especially the fire comes out of the hills, it comes out with momentum. Usually it's wind-driven, so there's sparks, there's embers, they blow. So you may be 2 or 3 houses deep, but you still have that risk of things blowing into your yard. So once again, keep your trees trimmed, the trash away from the houses, those ignitable things away. And that's part of that. And then it usually breaks at a street, because the street is, again, another 100 feet of defensible space that is essentially a non-combustible fire break. So that's kind of the way that it's done, is that it isn't just the house because of burning embers and the way the fire moves. And that's why in some pockets, it'll run fairly deep. I know at my house, I've got 4 neighbors between me and the wildland, but it's kind of at a draw in a canyon, and the way the wind patterns move, they said we predict it'll go through. So there's a great deal of computer modeling and predicting that goes into that as well.
Okay, so as far as I have learned, the only thing that's the hazard to these people is the bluff that goes down to the freeway behind them, which is a couple of dozen yards back over there on the other side of the canal, street. And the growth that Caltrans does not keep trimmed off. And we've had a couple of fires on that hillside there, between the freeway and the church. So I guess that must be the risk to those people.
My assumption would be is if there's a fire coming up that slope, the upslope winds would carry embers into the residential area. So the concern is that although it may even be down towards the bottom of the slope, the wind is carrying those embers up into 2 and 3 level deep into the houses.
Okay, so there's really no mitigating efforts on their part that can resolve this. They're just stuck with being in a high fire hazard, high risk area.
You are in a high fire risk area, more because of the terrain, wind patterns and whatever, than actually the brush load. And the hill up here, there isn't much brush. The donkeys ate it all. But we're still in that area because what is there can burn and can drift into the residential area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other questions? Well, I have a couple. Since this is CAL FIRE, and my mother used to own a house up there in Running Springs, and CAL FIRE imposed a fee on there on the property tax. It was actually the Governor Brown. It's $120 extra per year, and it was integrated with the property tax. Something like we have San Bernardino County Fire doing that, but there was an extra fee on there. So is there going to be another fee put on this high risk area for here? That's the same as with the mountain resorts. And then I had to have, when you talked about pine needles, are we gonna be under the same obligation? You know, pine needles gotta be picked up at a certain time of the year, just like our fields have to be, you know, mowed or disc or whatever, a certain time of the year. Are we gonna have other, things like, you know, if there's trash or, you know, stuff stored on the side, is CAL FIRE gonna go around with code and look at this? Because now we're at a high fire hazard, or is this gonna just be the same? And we're only doing this because of insurance reasons?
So to answer the first question, the fee is associated with CAL FIRE's wildland response area. So if you are in an area that CAL FIRE is responsible for wildland suppression, then you pay for that additional fee. CAL FIRE is not responsible for any wildland suppression area in Grand Terrace, so that fee is not part of that. And as this is purely a map for homeowners to be aware and for insurance companies to determine rates. We're not planning on creating some code enforcement bureaucracy. If you don't want your house to burn down, get the pine needles off the roof and pick up the trash. And if you do, don't. It really comes down to the homeowner.
All right, thank you. So do I have a motion for item 5?
So
Yeah,
moved.
um,
Sorry, go ahead.
and I'll second it.
All right, Councilman Rowles' motion and Councilman Allen's second. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, item 6. Was that pulled by you too, also, Councilman Allen, or was that a? Okay, well, and I also. So we have any public comment for number 6 then?
I
Or
believe you
question?
need to move forward with the item first and then public.
Pardon?
You need to move forward with the item first and then public
Okay,
comment.
so item 6. Is authorize the city manager execute agreement in the, substantially the same as from attachment between the city of Grand Terrace and the city of San Bernardino for animal shelter services. So, well, I do have a question for that, then we'll get with the public comment, but my question is, we had issues with the San Bernardino County or the San Bernardino City Animal Shelter before, you know, with the kill, is this a kill shelter still? And what, you know, have they improved their shelter since the last time, because we stopped contract with them?
So two questions. First, they've done a dramatic turnaround with the shelter. They've cleaned that up. In the past, the shelter was under the police department in kind of a forgotten island in the police bureaucracy and was not really maintained and did not have the professional staff that a shelter requires. Over the last 5 or 6 years, San Bernardino City has brought in professional animal shelter people. I mean, this is a trade, and it's not some sergeant assigned to it who'd rather be, you know, chasing bad guys. These are professionals who manage animal shelters. They've cleaned that up. There's a professional crew there, and frankly, 7 years ago, my last city, I left San Bernardino City because of the quality of their shelter, and went to Redlands. So they have improved dramatically, and as a person that was taking animals there on a routine basis, there is a dramatic change and improvement in the quality and the care and what they're doing at the shelter. San Bernardino does euthanize animals, as does Riverside, as does Redlands. And to weigh them, you know, the Riverside shelter does make it much more difficult to surrender an animal than the San Bernardino shelter. So if a resident wants to give away their animal, Riverside makes it hard to do that. And what we end up doing is getting animals that are abandoned, then we have to impound them and or they're loose in the community, causing a threat to the community. So that ease of being able to surrender an animal is an important part. And then just the distance, you know, being able to get to the San Bernardino shelter to repatriate your animal versus driving, you know, 30, 35 minutes to Riverside is a real challenge. And, you know, some people are not willing to do that or don't have the means to do that.
So are we signing an annual contract, or is this as month to month that we did have
Annual
issues?
contract.
All right, so if we did have issues with the shelter, I mean, how hard would it be to break that contract?
We have a 30-day notice.
Any other questions? Councilmember Henderson.
I have two questions for the manager. The $141 per animal impounded fee, is that for the term of the agreement, or can that change?
For the term of the agreement.
Okay. And the second question I have, under the scope of services, it indicates the distance of the shelter to Grand Terrace as a consideration of the city of Grand Terrace. But it's blank in the agreement as to the maximum number of miles the shelter can be between the city and the shelter. Let me try to restate that for you. The San Bernardino shelter is characterized in the staff report as advantageous to Riverside because of its closer proximity to the city of Grand Terrace and its citizens. However, in the brief discussion in the agreement regarding the maximum number of miles this shelter can be from the city of Grand Terrace, it's left blank. It just has XXX.
Oh, that was an oversight on our part, sorry. It's 10 miles.
10 miles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we don't want is have them relocating it to Del Rosa or something. And it needs to stay close enough, because if
Right.
not, then we can look at Moreno Valley or Riverside again.
Yeah, that was my concern as well.
Is for convenience.
Thank you.
Other questions? Madam City Clerk, we have any public comment?
Yes, sir. Bobby Forbes.
Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. Good evening. So I have a lot of questions regarding this. I'm not sure if I'll be able to touch on all of them because my mind might not be quick enough for this since I didn't know it was on the agenda. I would like to know, is this happening because we are short-staffed? Is Grand Terrace going to stop animal control services and now we're going to go back to having City of San Bernardino be on call or coming in for services? I was one of the people that protested the shutting down of the San Bernardino shelter 5 years ago because it was horrible, because the police department was running it and it was despicable. And I'm so glad that they have cleaned it up. I can say and agree with that they have cleaned it up. Riverside Shelter just had a huge influenza go through it. Hundreds of animals were being euthanized because of this virus that hit that shelter. It probably was in other shelters too, but Riverside was the one most public on it. My big question is, are we understaffed, and is that why this is happening? I didn't like going to Riverside because it is so far away, and the city of San Bernardino, when they wanted to shut down their shelter, tried to contract with the Riverside shelter, and that government agency in Riverside, I don't remember if it was city or county, said, no, keep your animals over there, because no one would go get them if they have to drive 30 miles away and go look and see if their dog or cat is in the shelter or adopt from there. So I'm sitting on the fence on this, but I'm really interested to know, is it because of city staff being short with, I remember when Barry was here for 10 plus years and she quit because she was going to have to become an animal control officer along with code enforcement. I think the code enforcement officer, whichever we have right now, are overworked. I think you're all overworked at our staff, but I'd like to know what the answer is to that. And I know that they have really lousy facility in San Bernardino and have wanted to get a new facility, and they were going to move it west, is my understanding, out to 10 somewhere. I don't recall how far away that is. Maybe you do. But that would be a concern that I have. That facility in San Bernardino is so old, the animals are outside all the time. There's no indoor shelter except for the cats, is my understanding. And in Riverside, at least they have indoor-outdoor kennels. They can go inside and outside. They are at least out of the weather, like tonight's weather. And maybe that's not a concern for a lot of people, but most of you know that it's a concern of mine and many of the people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis in Grand Terrace and other cities. So my biggest question is it because we're understaffed?
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. You want to answer that, City Manager?
No, this is not a function of staffing. This is a function of the ability to provide the service to the residents and to actually have some efficiency in our staffing. And there is no intention of getting or shifting our animal control services to another entity. We get really good service from our staff, and they're invested in the community. They care. They know the animals. They know the owners. And if we start contracting out, we lose that connection. You know, our number one priority is to repatriate the animal. Our officers know where a lot of these animals live. They take them home. They don't have to impound them. And that avoids all the trauma for the animal and the owner. So an outside contract would not do that, so that is not the goal at all. San Bernardino is looking at a new site right behind the bowling alley, so it would just be down off of Orange Show. It's not in the same neighborhood. And part of the $141 is actually a portion to help fund a new shelter. And they do have their animals in covered kennels. They are not all indoor. And that is something that they're working towards as part of the new shelter construction.
All right, any other public comments?
No, Mayor.
Any other comments? I just got to say one thing, you look at the overall big picture here, and that's to be responsible owner for your pets. Make sure they have a license, you make sure they have a chip, try to get that. And, make sure they have all their shots. That's a responsible owner because, they do get out, they are our pets, but we also have to be responsible for if they do get out and they bite somebody, we have to also take care of that person, so. Anyway, so you may like to make a motion for item 6.
I'll move item 6.
Seconds.
I'll second.
So item 6 moved by Councilmember Allen, second by Councilmember Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, item 9. I had a question on item 9. So, and you had one too, Councilmember Allen? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
So, thanks, Mayor. My question about this is, as stated on packet page 110 in the discussion section, or just prior to that, in the background, in the very last paragraph, states the city received an allocation of $41,010 for eligible COVID-19 new or existing programs. And then in the discussion section, it states, the city of Grand Terrace will contract with Lighthouse Social Service Centers to provide outreach and rapid rehousing services to homeless persons who have or are at risk of contracting COVID-19. And these funds will be used to provide willing homeless persons with new to them residences and will include but not be limited to, and then it goes on to state that. So this is my question. Does the allocation of the funds that we receive to recipients, is it dependent upon a COVID-19 diagnosis? Does the individual have to be impacted by COVID-19 to be able to receive any of these funds from us?
They do not have to test positive to receive the funds. They have to be at risk for exposure to. This is some background on this. In the middle of the pandemic, there were all kinds of programs and funds being created to help people at risk. The city applied for this grant, and as we're going through our grants, nobody ever expended these funds or even engaged to expend these funds. So as we're cleaning up our grants, we have a window to where we can actually use these funds, what's left of them, for positive expenditure before we give it back to the state. And we're trying to put what help we can out there at this point, although the COVID risk is still there, but not like it was in the middle of the pandemic, and it is not contingent upon being COVID tested positive, just that you are homeless and do not have the ability to test and are potentially exposed to COVID.
Or, as stated in the discussion, it could be rental assistance or
something to get you off the street and into a house.
Or keep you off the street, perhaps?
Or keep you off the street.
Keep you from getting on the street, like helping a homeowner who, is those possibilities available also?
Those possibilities through Lighthouse. If Lighthouse offers that, then that is available through that.
Right on. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I'll move it if you're ready, if there's no other.
I have one question.
Okay.
So the Lighthouse Service, Social Service Center, it's in Colton? Is that what we're partnering with?
They are based in Colton, yes.
Okay. And my question is, do we have to give our funds to them? Can we use our own Sheriff Service Hope program for this program?
The grant was written for Lighthouse.
Okay, so it's designated.
It's designated in the grant.
Okay, well, that's all I have. Anybody else have a question? Well, Councilmember Allen moved the item. Any second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Rowland, second. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
So, next item is public comment. This is opportunity for the members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of the restrictions contained in California law, the city council may not discuss or act on any of the items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. The mayor may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during the public comment, or may request the matter to be agendized for future meetings. So, Madam City Clerk, we have any public comments?
Yes, Bobby Forbes.
Okay, Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. So trucks are sleeping, truck drivers are sleeping in trucks on Barton Road, Terrace Avenue, La Cadena, and they're parking in the dirt across from 21700 Barton Road, the old Lineage Warehouse. In the dirt corner there, I don't know if that's Grand Terrace or Colton, but there's two specific trucks that come on a regular basis and stay days at a time. I have pictures, I will send them to the city manager. I haven't called anybody on it except to notify a few people in the area to see if they too would watch. There's a lot of stuff going on with the trucks in my neighborhood. They come through at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. It's not just for TSG now, because they've blocked the road opposite the warehouse on Barton Road, so the trucks can't go down there. So now they're more confused than ever, and they are in the neighborhood, and I'm not helping them or giving them directions anymore. I just watch them get screwed up. I'm going to ask again about the signage in town. I know you don't want signs up. Yard sale signs, that got worked out 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We need to come up with an agreement about the lost and found pet signs. If they're dated, leave them up for 36 hours or 2 days or something, because there's real estate signs up that are illegal. There's pool signs that are up illegal. There's all kinds of signs up all over town. But I think you're targeting me when I put up my lost and found pet signs. And I'm going to keep putting them up. Even if you charge me fines, I'm going to keep putting them up, because they get the animals home one way or another. And if they don't within a couple of days, I go out and take them down. Or the people that own the pet go out and take them down. But we need to come to some kind of agreement for this. I don't want like litter in the community, but we need to help the residents get their dogs back, so they're not at the shelter where it's $20, $30, $40, $50 a day. I pay for people to get their dogs chipped. I pay for them to get them neutered. Help me help our community, please. I'm not the only one that puts up the signs, but I put up most of them. And it really irritates me when you take down my sign, but you don't take down the 2% real estate sign, or you don't take down the I clean pools or whatever it is signs. And over the weekend, there was somebody in my neighborhood that had a Valentine's Day booth set up on the street. That's not okay. That's not a yard sale, and that's not okay. So I called the sheriff, and the sheriff shut her down on the second day. I think she got tired on the first day. And I called the landlord today and let him know. It just looks junky, and I, too, want my community to look nice. But please help us with these lost and found pet signs. Thank you.
Manager, you want to answer any of those questions?
With the lost and found pet signs, we are giving a great deal of latitude. I don't think we've ever cited you on one. No, we haven't. Okay. And so we give a great deal of latitude. We leave, our officers leave them up as long as they feel are necessary. They don't get torn down the first day. So we're trying to work it without creating a whole new system of bureaucracy to manage it. And we're trying to work with Bobby so that we don't, like I said, we're not chasing her down the street. We're trying to work with it and kind of make it work out without creating any bureaucracy to manage that. Because anything we do would, like the yard sale sign, you'd have to come in here, get a sign, put it up, you've now lost a day, day and a half, you've taken time out from work to do this, it really becomes inconvenient for the owner. It becomes inconvenient, and we're delaying that repatriation for that animal. So while we're kind of turning a blind eye, we are working with and kind of giving a lot of latitude on the lost pet signs.
Okay, what about the city, for the trucking issue?
The trucks, actually, the sheriff and I were just discussing that issues. We've got some locations, we'll step up enforcement in those areas. And in the past, what we've done is taken code enforcement and shifted them to some later day hours. And we did that a couple of months ago. It's probably time for us to do that anyway, because people know code enforcement is here from 8 to 5, and if they're here from noon till 8, it gives us a little bit of a different view of the city. So we'll do that and have them run past those truck areas for that too.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment?
None, no, sir.
All righty. So we'll go ahead and move on to public hearings. Item 10, authorization of funding the recommendation for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG funds for program year 2023-2024.
Thank you, Mayor Hussey, Mayor Pro Tem in his absence, and City Council, Shanita Tillman, Public Works Senior Management Analyst, and I'll be discussing CDBG funding recommendations for the 2023-2024 program year. The following report supports the following vision. Goal number 4, develop and implement successful partnerships by working collaboratively with community groups and private and public sector agencies to facilitate the delivery of services benefiting youth, seniors, and our community. The CDB program does the following: benefits low to moderate income persons, eliminates blight, and meets an urgent need. 4 public service projects can be funded in any given year, and the application deadline was December 7th, 2022. Grand Terrace's expected allocation is $56,020. And the following 4 applications were eligible, and that's San Bernardino County Grand Terrace Library, Adult Literacy Program, Family Services Association, Senior Nutrition, Family Services Association, Senior Center Coordinator, and City of Grand Terrace Rehabilitation/Improvements to Local Streets. And staff supports the following funding recommendations, and that's $10,000 towards the Adult Literacy Program, $10,000 towards the Senior Nutrition Program, $36,020 towards the Senior Center Coordinator, and $0 towards the City of Grand Terrace's rehabilitation improvements to local streets. And with that being said, while we aren't requesting any funding for the city, we did not want to take away any funding from our senior community, which gets most of the funding. And the recommendation is to conduct a public hearing for the recommendation of eligible applications for the 2023-2024 Community Development Block Grant CDBG funding, and prioritize funding allocations, and authorize staff to submit CDBG's funding recommendations to the County of San Bernardino Economic Development Agency. And I'm available for any questions.
Council have any questions? Councilman Allen?
Thank you for that report, Ms. Tillman. My questions are about FSA and the money they receive. Prior to the COVID pandemic, our senior center was open routinely during the day and the evenings for seniors to use, and there were fresh hot meals made daily at lunchtime, and there were activities in the evenings and on weekends that were held there. We had a bus service that was on time that we provided also. And right now, those things are not really happening the way they used to. And I've been hearing over the months and the years that I've been sitting up here that when we approve these, that, for example, the last time I heard we got a report, FSA said that the plan was to have the senior center open for regular business like it used to be by early this year. And as far as I know, has that happened that you know of?
That has not happened. I did communicate with the director of Family Services Association, Tom Donahue, trying to find out the same information as to why hot meals haven't resumed. And so I am still waiting on a response for that. That is a complaint that I have heard numerous times and is something that the city does want to implement again.
Yeah, because I mean, we have been hearing it for a long time that this is the plan. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that and then of course the I don't know if so if we were to approve this, would that happen? Is this what it's going to take to make that happen? Is this request being approved?
Not necessarily. We do anticipate requesting that they do resume it. I'm not sure at this moment what it would take for them to do that. But I know with the same funding, they have done it. So it is possible, I'm sure. And that is something that we can definitely bring to their forefront as a need for our city.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tillman. Thank you,
We
Mayor.
have the director from FSA here. I think he's
You want to answer the question?
glad to speak to that.
Oh, glad to have you.
He was hiding from you. Sir, you want to go ahead and state your name, please?
Absolutely. Good evening and happy Valentine's Day. My name is Tom Donahue. I'm the Program Administrator for Family Service Association. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and give you an update. Thank you, Councilman. I think that's a great question that we should answer and get that information to you. And my apologies to Ms. Tillman for not getting back in a timely manner. I'm the director for the Senior Nutrition Program. I've been involved with FSA for 10 years at the center. And to cut to the chase, what we're looking at right now to get out of the COVID, where we've been, for the past 2.5 years, been distributing meals with what we call a grab-and-go process, where they come through once a week and they get 5 frozen meals throughout, to sustain them throughout the week, so they get their meals. What we are doing throughout the county, we have 16 locations that we operate throughout San Bernardino County. And we're about 80% complete with bringing hot meals back to them. We're working with currently Loma Linda, Colton, and your location to get staffing on board so that we can resume the hot meal program as soon as possible. That's our desire too, because as you know, a meal is not really the goal. The goal is to get them to the senior center where we can have socialization, we can connect them to other services, and I'm 100% on board with your comments and critique of our program. Why can't we get it done 6 months ago? Well, part of it is just the process of going through, because where we cook the programs and where we support it for this particular area, we have to get that staffing in place. We're also working with a Hispanic volunteer organization called IUDA, and they help us provide volunteers that come into the center, in addition to volunteers that we get from the Grand Terrace community. Half our workforce come from volunteers. That's what makes our program work. We have one primary staff member that's 35 hours per week currently with our contract. That's at $40,000 for this current fiscal year. So they've been able to restart the Senior Advisory Club. They've got bingo going on. They have over 100 plus unduplicated people that come through there that we service on a monthly basis at the center. So we're making those efforts, and I'd be happy to meet with any of you to talk about our program and meet at the center to see what more we could do to provide the services. Part of what we do in my program is I work under a contract with the Department of Aging, Adult Service, and Public Guardian with the County of San Bernardino. And they have a lot of other services. I came from an event at the new Bloomington Ayala Park Community Center, and we had a lot of those organizations there that can help provide your seniors with different information on senior services in the region. And we can help set those things up as requested. My goal is to get the hot meals started before the end of this fiscal year, if not sooner. Part of it is I have to get the staff in place to make it work. That's one of our major challenges right now is the recruiting of staff because we don't hire full-time people. We have part-time people or we rely on volunteers to get into it. So we're fortunate IUTA has been very helpful to get us the program in place, and we've reinstituted starting cooking again at our distribution center, which is based in Fontana, where we prepare the meals and would bring them here. And we call this as a warming center so that then we would then heat and serve the meals here at this location. We anticipate this year, just so you know what we're doing, it's over 180 unduplicated seniors, and we're going to serve about 15,000 meals in the grab and go, just the frozen program. And we anticipate the hot meal program to serve about that number going forward. But we're very proud of our relationship and very thankful for the contribution and support we've had from the council and from the community and the housing organization that is adjacent to the center to help us with our program. But I'd be happy to answer any more direct questions. And I know sometimes I'm beyond 3 minutes, I think. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you on this issue. I'll hit the button.
Yeah, we do have some other questions. Hold on, Councilman Allen. Okay. Councilman Henderson, you had a question before?
My questions are for Ms. Tillman.
Okay. Well, don't go anywhere because we do have questions for you too.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilman
I'm here.
So I have a question. You asked,
Hold on, Councilman Allen. Councilman Henderson's got the floor.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Go ahead, Councilman Henderson.
Ms. Tillman, my assumption based on your staff report, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 3 national objectives that you cite, that this program would qualify as provision of services to low to moderate income households?
Yes.
Now, that's an assumption because of you were talking about 100% seniors?
Correct. Correct. So the senior community qualifies, I guess, in that range.
Okay. Now, is there still a 15% limitation on the use of funds for public services?
Yes.
So do we calculate that here locally as the county calculates that for us?
It's the county.
Okay. So this falls within the county's 15% limitation, public service limitation? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Allen, go ahead.
oh, I wanted to ask Mr. Donahue, you said that your goal is to have hot meals prepared there in the kitchen by the end of the fiscal year, or have it open, is that correct, by the end of the, and I was just wondering, did you say fiscal or physical?
Excuse me, fiscal.
And when is that?
By June.
By June?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, I remember when that facility first went up, I think it was the seniors ran it completely themselves. They cooked and did everything, but.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look for, we'll look to enjoy meals together in June. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I'll leave my cards here for the council, and if anybody wants to contact me and meet at the center, I'd be happy to talk further about it. And you can help us promote the center as well if you had through your communication with the city council to the community.
And that's all I was going to ask you. What do you need the city to help promote for that? And the volunteers, is there an age requirement for this? I mean, can they have our high school youth volunteer for this? Is it certain
We
days?
try to keep we over 18, but we do, there's some social service commitments for a lot of our high school seniors to get into that. We have a volunteer coordinator at our main office. They can contact us and we could take a look at it. Part of our long-term objective is how do we work on intergenerational programming? Because senior centers are probably what was in our past, and in our future is how do we develop community centers that address the entire family? because it would be great to have these kinds of programs, to have the youth help train me on like electronic devices and how to use electronic devices and how to work other gadgets. But also the seniors could be there to give life lessons to teach our youth from their life experience on how to manage a checkbook, you know, how to fill out your taxes and help them with certain things like that. So I think there's a lot of great resources on that. But help communicate an awareness of what the program is and that the Senior Center is there. Unfortunately, we don't have a strong local media that focuses in on local issues. And whatever you can do in your city communications, if you have a council or mayoral newsletter that you send out to your constituents, those are kind of things to work out. Also, we publish our menu for the nutrition program monthly. So if you have that on your city website, a place where they go for senior services, you can help post that there, that your senior residents can go and see what our menu is on a monthly basis. And we can make sure we can work with your city clerk and whoever you designate to make those kinds of things happen.
Well, I know finding staff to work can be challenging. I mean,
Yes,
the
it
restaurants are having a challenge and stuff, trying to find.
And they're our main competition.
I never thought I would see the day in this country that nobody wants to work. But on the employment part, where would they go to find, you know, to look if somebody does want to do a part-time job? I mean, can you get that to the city staff so we could post that so people might know?
Absolutely. We work online. Our main website is fsaca.org, and conveniently buried, at the bottom of the page, you'll see a jobs listing for the different jobs we have. And senior nutrition is not the only program that Family Service has in the region. We do everything from, I tell people, pre-K to gray. And in San Bernardino County, it's mostly the senior services, but in other areas, we have child development centers, we do family counseling, we have housing, and we manage, as we do in Grand Terrace, senior centers. So that's part of our wheelhouse and what we try to do. Because we feel that if a community is strong and family is strong, then we achieve our mission. Because that's what you've asked us to do, is come in to fill the gaps of the great programs that you have here, and then we're your partner to kind of help out along the edges on that.
Well, you know, sir, I applaud you, because I know we did at the San Bernardino City Mission. We go to the seniors and shut-ins, and we had the football players volunteer, and I never seen so many ladies happy seeing these young men. You know, it was really neat, and a lot of them brought back memories of their sons or loved ones and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know our football team used to go to the senior center and other sports, and then like the Jazz players would go there and do that. Because, and like you said, not only is it feeding their body, you're feeding their souls when you come together.
Absolutely.
And that's the big thing is, you know, the fellowship, camaraderie, the togetherness that will bring up spirits. So, you know, just let the city know what, you know, we need to do, and we want to see it succeed, and you know, hopefully everything get back in normal one day. So.
Absolutely. We're all hoping for that. And we have great hope by the 2023, I can't believe we're saying 2024, that we will achieve that goal for you.
All right. Well, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We'll go ahead and close the questions. Do we have any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Ken Henderson, go ahead.
I have a question for the manager or Ms. Tillman. I'm trying to come up to speed with respect to where Grand Terrace is today versus when I was on the council 4 years ago. And I believe 4 years ago, there was a general fund appropriation to the senior center. It was done every year. Is that no longer in place? And do these funds, in effect, supplant the general fund dollars that used to go to the senior center?
Go back to the slide that has the money.
I recall the amount being
so-
about $25,000 to $35,000 a year.
FSA requested $50,000. There's a general fund appropriation that makes up that difference, whatever that.
I'm sorry?
The FSA requested $50,000. We're recommending that we give them $36,020. There's a general fund appropriation that makes up that difference, so we fulfill their request. There isn't enough CDBG money to go all the way,
Okay.
so
okay.
there is general.
So
fund
we
money.
still provide general fund assistance?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions before we open a public comment? Do we have any public comment on this item?
Yeah, we'll open the public hearing with Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. I like this man that just spoke. Thank you for coming this evening. It's the first time I've ever seen you at a meeting, and I'm at a lot of them. The senior program is wonderful. Before COVID, I wasn't old enough to really be there. I would pay to go have lunch there. Now I'm old enough to be a member and get the meals, per se. But I have referred during COVID at least 6 people from town that had no idea that this food was available on the Wednesday for pickup. And I would go pick it up and take it to them, and then eventually they figured out how to do it themselves. But they would have not been eating otherwise. So this is a really great program, and thank you again. I had the pleasure of being invited to go for the Thanksgiving and Christmas meals at the Senior Center this past, and I guess the city council approved X amount of money, so that was a spur-of-the-moment or last-minute event. And it was great. There were 60 people there. Got there, it was real low-key and quiet, and then as the music progressed and the people ate food, they were up and dancing and having a blast, and I could tell that it was missed. They so enjoyed it, and many of the people that were at that luncheon lived there, but not all. Some came from far that I spoke with. It's just really important. I'm glad that you're going to try to bring it back where they can have the regular luncheons. And I know the Lions used to go and play pool, and there were different events. I recently had a client retired from the computer industry, and he was moving to Arizona, and he was going to go into a senior community and volunteer his tech-savvy ways to teach people how to use the cell phones and how to help their computer when they couldn't figure it out and be able to keep up with technology. I'm trying to teach my mom. She's still on a flip phone at 91 years old, you know, but she's getting it where she's learning to text. And that's important for them to stay in communication with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So this program is essential to this community. It's not the same as it was when Ms. Johnson was opening it and running it. It has changed a lot because of the times changing and with COVID. But please work really hard to keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
We'll close the public hearing as there are no more public comments.
Okay. And we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for any discussions and motion. Thank you, Ms. Tome.
Thank you.
Anybody like to, any other further discussions on this? I'd like to make a motion.
Well,
Councilman Robles?
I just, I have a lot of agendas now to look at. So, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't consider funding fully the contract with our general fund money. So, because in the past, we used to have like recreation programs that were very beneficial to this community. And I wouldn't want not to have, this is a meager amount that we possibly would have a bigger bang on a very, localized level. So maybe next year we could consider that. But with that, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for Councilman Robles, second for Councilman Henderson. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's go to, what are we on? Item 11?
Yes.
Okay. Item 11, objective design standards for multifamily housing and mixed-use developments, presented by Ms. Aguirre, Senior Planner.
Good evening, Mayor Hussey and members of the council. The objective design standards were introduced to the Planning Commission last year in May 19, and on June 16, we had a joint special workshop meeting with the City Council and the Planning Commission, and both bodies provided feedback to staff. Throughout this process, the city of Grand Terrace was selected among 3 other cities by SCAG through a grant program to assist with the development of our objective design standards. Our consultant, Crandall Arambula, was hired from SCAG, and their team has been working with staff to further develop the city's objective design requirements, including addressing the City Council and the Planning Commission's comments that we have had in previous meetings. On January 19 of this year, the Planning Commission, Site and Architectural Review Board, conducted a public hearing and approved unanimously, adopting a resolution and recommending to the City Council to adopt this ordinance. Additional provisions were added by the Planning Commission, which have been incorporated on the objective design standards that you will be reviewing tonight. Those requirements they wanted us to include was compliance with San Bernardino County Fire And also they requested to add additional measures to mitigate privacy impacts between the new multifamily mixed-use developments and existing adjacent development. Tonight's presentation will be conducted by our SCAG consultant, Don Arambula from Crandall Arambula.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Council members, if you got questions, feel free to interrupt me. It's a pretty informal presentation, and I'll try to keep it brief. So here we go. Let me make sure I got this rolling here. Okay. As Heidi mentioned, we were hired by SCAG, and SCAG has been charged by the State of California's Housing and Community Development Department to look at ways to accelerate housing production and reduce housing costs. And there's lots of things that cities can't do. You can't reduce the cost of building materials, you can't reduce the cost of labor, cost of land, but there are things that cities can do to affect the process. And so there are two things that through expertise and review have been identified. The first is adopting objective design or development standards and faster permitting. And so that has really been the charge of this process, to figure out how to do that. My firm, Crandall Arambula, as Heidi mentioned, was selected through a competitive process by SCAG. We're not only working in Grand Terrace, but also right now working in Coachella, Newport Beach, and Westminster on a bundle of projects. And some of the issues there are similar to what you have, but each city is unique. So what we've done is to go through a systematic process and really address the local issues. So the first step was to get smart about Grand Terrace and have a better understanding of the context, the social nature of the city, what the affordability of housing is, understand your general plan, understand your existing regulations. And the second part of this was to assist staff. Grand Terrace is actually pretty fortunate compared to the other cities that we're working with, that you had already kick-started a process earlier in the year. And our charge is to refine that, provide our expertise of 25 years of doing this kind of work, and to give you the tools that will provide that predictability not only for the developers, the architects, but probably most importantly for your community to understand that what kind of multifamily development you're going to get. And then finally is to help through the approval process, and one of those meetings was working with your planning commission and tonight, and taking all that information and incorporating it into the document. So the objective design standards, you can see it's here, it's printed, and if you want to go page by page and ask a question, we can answer those, but I'm going to keep this really pretty high level and really hit some of the highlights of that. So the document is really broken into sections, and you can see those there, and I'm going to really kind of concentrate on just a few of the chapters out of it and not get into the weeds on everything. So first of all, as Heidi mentioned, there were some work that the Planning Commission has done. There was an initial session back in May, I believe it was, and the rough draft of the development and design standards were reviewed by the Planning Commission, and they asked for additional detail, and you can see it here. And one of those is public art. And as you know, that section was developed, and it is going to be removed and put in its own category. And you can see the others that are listed there. So each of those were added to the original draft, and there's a lot of detail, and good detail for each of those 7 elements. Further comments that we got from the Planning Commission, as Heidi mentioned, in our recent January session with them, was to look at 2 things: the permit and approvals, so it was consistent with the San Bernardino County Fire and the San Bernardino County Health in terms of infill development and tenant improvements and mixed-use development that includes restaurants. So that has been done. along with some additional design detail. And I apologize for the slide, it's a little bit off the edge here, that looked at how do you modulate buildings so that they're good neighbors with existing development. One of the comments was of concern is if you got development, we don't want to have people looking in backyards. So we've considered that, but also looked at the needs of the tenants. So some of the issues had to deal with balconies. People need outdoor areas. Those are areas that you need to get out to get some fresh air. But there are also opportunities where people could see in backyards. And there's also, pardon me? This screen a little bit there. So we're a little bit off the top too on there, but you can see that. And so the idea is to figure out some way of screening some of that, but also meeting building code and also maintaining the livability of those units. The standards is chock full of definitions, and one of the first definitions that we looked at is what is multifamily? So essentially it's, as you can see here, it's 2 or more residential units. And it doesn't apply to accessory units in particular. And I know you've got other ordinances that deal with that. Looked at mixed-use development and what constitutes
Councilor
the
Henderson
difference.
has a question. Hold on.
Go ahead. Go back. On this piece here?
Just in general, with respect to the objective design standards, do the standards apply to development agreements or specific plans if they have multifamily residential components?
They do. And Heidi, you want to answer that directly? She's got more of the detail and expertise on that directly.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner Henderson. These objective design standards are going to be applicable for all future development as long as there is a multifamily concept or a multifamily project or a mixed-use development that has a residential component.
So if we have an existing development agreement, approved development agreement, or an existing approved specific plan, the objective design standards would not apply?
No, they will apply.
They will apply.
They will apply, and the applicant is going to have a couple of options. You can either comply with the objective design standards that we are recommending tonight and have a ministerial review process by complying with that, or if they deviate from any of these standards, we will have to go through our discretionary review process and application process.
Which defeats the purpose of objective design standards, right? If you have to go through the typical discretionary development approval and review process.
We're giving the applicants the option to follow these requirements. They're objectable. We are giving them the guidelines to follow those requirements. And they do have the option either to comply with what we're presenting on the objective design standards, or if they want to ask for a variance on a minor deviation, that would be something that we wouldn't support on the objective design standards, and that will trigger the discretionary review process, yes.
I appreciate your response, and thank you for that, because it wasn't clear to me that the objective design standards apply to pre-existing agreements that the city may have entered into in the past. So, Mr. City Attorney, did you have a comment?
Yes, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
What specific agreements were you referencing, if you wanted?
I'm sorry?
What specific agreements were you referencing? And if you want to talk offline, maybe I could.
It was just a hypothetical, but the one agreement or the one project that came to mind was the Gateway at Grand Terrace specific plan.
Right, and I don't believe that has ever been formally adopted. Is that correct?
The Gateway specific plan, we're still working with the applicant on that project. If the project meets the objective design standards when it comes, then they will have a ministerial review process for their multifamily proposals. But if they deviate from our objective design standards, then we will come to the Planning Commission through the discretionary review.
So to clarify, on specifically for the Gateway without, and Adrian's going to kick me if I go off the reservation here, we are still in the environmental review process for that specific plan, so nothing has been determined yet and nothing is written in stone. And the applicant is specifically asking that they go through the Planning Commission City Council process, because they will not hit the objective design standards.
Okay, thank you.
One other note, you mentioned the development agreement. Usually with a development agreement, you freeze the zoning at that point in time when it was adopted. So in theory, again, hypothetical, if there was a development agreement that was previously approved that it froze the land use standards at that point in time, it would be optional to the developer.
That was my assumption as well, but it wasn't really clear. Also, that same standard would apply to previously approved specific plans, because they also contain their own zoning and development rules.
True, but that's not an entitlement per se. That would basically be zoning on a specific area of property. So in my thought is the development agreement entitles that developer to those specific regulations at that point in time, whereas a specific plan is just another function of zoning. And so it would have to comply with current law.
Okay, thank you.
All right. In that same vein, what about the Greens Group? They were going to have a housing element.
They will either need to comply with the objective design standard or go through the process as it stands today. Okay. Or anybody coming in the future, and this really is an avenue. If somebody's willing to meet the objective design standards, it's an avenue for ministerial approval. If not, then they still have the avenue to go through the Planning Commission City Council process and make a case for why they need to be different.
Right. And to follow up on that, essentially provide a minimum standard for a developer to comply with. We can't require any more. However, if they voluntarily want to do something different, that would be up to them. We can't require it, however.
So this is the floor.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so I'll keep rolling here. So there's a definition of multi-use development, and so as you can see it right there, it's 2/3 square footage for the building shall be designed for residential use. And we're just going through this ministerial review process. Just to editorialize a little bit, having worked with a lot of communities around the country, if you can find a direct path, a tract with ODS, a lot of developers do not want to spend the time of a specific plan, especially if it's a smaller project. And so this is really a way of giving it a two-track system, or streamlining it, or fast-tracking it, so that they don't all have to do specific plans. Really, it's a very valuable tool for you to have. And the ministerial review process is really intended to be to have no personal judgment. So the standards are clear and objective, and it's not a he said, she said. It's not discretionary. So it's very clear rules of the game as you go through it. The objective design standards I mentioned, it's their musts, shoulds, permitted, prohibited. There's no cans or maybes. It is clear and objective. So that's how these are written. So there's no gray area. And when we look at the document, it's broken up into two major sections that have to deal with the volume and the mass of the buildings, if you will, vertically, what comes out of the ground, and then the site. And there's some intent for each of these standards, and we start with residential entries. There's a piece on that. The idea here is to really try to animate the public realm, the sidewalks, the street, and really try to get opportunities for people to enter their units, not to say that they can't from a parking lot, but really orient the development towards sidewalks. And so this is a standard that does that for lobbies and residential entries. There's also ideas to how you can connect it to things like greenways or mid-block crossings, connections to stairwells. So you have clear and unobstructed sight lines to these areas, and also from parking lots. The standards, as we mentioned really briefly, is you want to be a good neighbor. And so there needs to be some modulation and articulation of the buildings. So one of these is really thinking about heights of building and as they get taller. And they're next to existing development, look at stepping away from that so that there's less impact on existing development. And this is what this standard does. There are standards that look at the types of building that you're getting so that you don't get blocky, featureless buildings. So you can modulate it in articulated ways. And so this standard really talks about pushing and pulling the facade in and out and providing some regularity of that so you don't have long expanses of buildings that look like an ocean liner that's grounded in your community. So this is really kind of the idea with that. The articulation and modulation, there's lots of things that are proposed as options. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And so a developer and architect can pick from ways to give some buildings some visual interest. And you see those options here. There's also standards not only look at the facades of the buildings, but the roof, so that the buildings are not simply just blocks, but have some movement on the roof line and have some features worked into sloped roofs, as you can see, decreasing of heights, roof form changes, and maybe even some livable areas within the roof lines using things like dormers. There's some interest in standards for creating what's largely called four-sided architecture. You don't just give up on the facade along the streets, but you design all four sides of the building, looking for quality, durable materials so that it doesn't get built and 5 years later it looks like something you're going to have to refurbish or change over time. You want this to be a long-lasting, durable project. Looking at amenities for the residents who are living in these areas so that it's not simply just a place for people to live, but it's a place where they can enjoy life within the development. And then also looking at other things like architectural projections and other elements that come along with that. Colors are often an issue, so the idea here is really to look at providing a palette of primary colors that is somewhat limited, and the idea here is really to build off of colors that are natural to the Inland Empire and Grand Terrace so that they don't look like they've been imported from someplace else. But on the other hand, give the opportunity to the developer to have some accent colors, especially doors, and so that it isn't bland. So it's really is a discrete use of color on a building, and there's standards for that. Then flipping to the site, the horizontal piece of this. So there's the overall site, and site access and then connectivity is important. We don't want to have compounds, inwardly oriented fortresses, but really have the ability to move in and out through the development sites if it's large. So there's a maximum size dictated that can't exceed without having some access and connectivity so that if you're in an adjacent neighborhood, you can move through it and not have a barrier. And then there are some other elements that deal with privacy, because you want some access and connectivity, but there are private areas on development sites, and there are standards for things like walls and fences and details how those should be built. Yeah, go ahead.
This is for anyone who can answer it. Does the agreement with the consultant include a community education component? And the reason I ask that question is because much of what would go to the Planning Commission or the council as appropriate is now going to be approved or denied by the planning director. And having lived here for 38 years, multifamily housing can be perceived as problematic, and unless the community understands and appreciates what the gentleman is discussing and what is being imposed upon localities by the state, it would make the job of the director and staff and the manager significantly easier if, in fact, community education was integral to this particular process.
So we've had multiple community meetings on this. We had an open community workshop. So there were 2 community meetings for input. We had a workshop with the City Council and the Planning Commission, and then we've also had the Planning Commission meeting. So there's been ability for the community to provide input throughout this process. We didn't just make this up and throw it in front of you. This has been an ongoing process for well over a year, and looking for that input.
Yeah, when you're saying about all those meetings, then I'm wondering, like, where have I been? Because to me, it wasn't very educational. I mean, and when those meetings I asked for, and I think it's very important that we have demographics showing what the different parameters of those income thresholds are and how they mesh with our existing demographics. For example, if low moderate is going to be some of the housing stock, then how many low moderate people do we have in Grand Terrace? What is the profile? Sitting here talking and looking at Zillow every day or Realtor every day, Orange County isn't suffering from any housing crisis. What the low interest rate seems to have done is raise housing prices even more beyond the reach of these folks. So I think we need an educational component, but what the elements of those educational components have to be based on who these people are, to teach the folks that they're not going to, I don't know what their concept of these people are, but it's very negative, and we need to personalize it.
We're not to that point yet, but there is a low moderate housing component as required, so that if you build this, you do have to include a percentage of low and moderate housing as part of a multifamily project. And those numbers are determined by SCAG as part of our RENA numbers.
Yeah, we understand that. But, you know, our local paper had, I think, what were we, a D or a C on the meeting our RENA, or even the document. So
we were a C on the housing element.
Okay. So, you know, I spend a lot of time in Dana Point because I have a mobile home there, and they've been able to meet it, and they're proceeding already in their environmental process. So it seems like an exclusive area like Dana Point can be somewhere there, and this valley is, you know, woefully behind. We have to get into the rhetoric of what the concept is of who these people are that will be included in this housing.
So this is different from the housing element and different from low, moderate, low income housing. This is a developer wants to build multifamily housing, regardless of who. They could be $1 million apartments, they could all be low income apartments. That regardless of what the economic class of the citizen is that's there, these are the standards.
I understand that, but at the same time, we got to meet RENA numbers, and I'm not hearing how we're going to meet that.
As a component of this, a percentage of the housing must be low, moderate income.
I understand that.
Historically, what's happened
That's not my concern. My concern is that we have to have a public educational component on this, that as we proceed, what's going to be the scenarios of what kind of prospective person was going to live there. Because somehow we're going to have to meet our RENA numbers, and it's going to have to be in proposed development.
So you're asking for an educational component after the fact to tell people what type of tenant will be there? Because
let me ask my peer, what are you envisioning when you say?
I'm going to suggest that hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Council, if that's the basis of the community education comments that I've heard so far, I don't believe that those meetings, those hearings will be sufficient. not only because of my own experience, but the citizens of Grand Terrace are going to rise up in arms if the community education component is not effectively implemented. Now, what that is comprised of, well, I think staff needs to give considerable thought to that, because essentially you have to, in my opinion, go where the people are. They're not going to get up from their dinner room tables and come to a planning commission hearing or a city council hearing on objective design standards, even if they understood what that was all about. I don't have the answer, but I can tell you that planning commission hearings and city council public hearings on objective design standards, if there's an assessment that the citizens understand and appreciate what that's about, I think that assessment is probably somewhat erroneous, if not completely so.
Mr. Mayor, may I suggest these comments, we save them for discussion after the public hearing? Complete the hearing presentation at this point, and then have questions.
Okay.
So I'll wrap it up pretty quickly. There's only a couple of slides to go here. And so there are some standards for if you've got a commercial component of a part of a multifamily development, things that are considering as awnings and canopies and the uses around your doors and entries and signage. As you saw in the table of contents, there was public art standards, and those through direction and resolution have been moved, as you can see there. So they're developed and they're located here. And so that's presentation. Any other questions beyond that? I'm available. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Allen. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to address Council Member Henderson's and Robley's concerns. You know, about the public education part. It seems to me that the people who need or want to be in the know on this subject are the ones who would find the source of information they need or where to find it at. I mean, I agree that there will probably be individuals who will raise their arms up and rail about the city and say, oh my God, objective design standards, they're just like they did with the hotel. Oh, it's for transients, it's the homeless, you know, and they're erroneous information. However, I guess what I was thinking about is other needs of education. The Colton Joint Unified School District does not send teachers out into people's homes to educate them. And other information that educate people, people have to go find that education if they want it. They have to go to the source of the education. And I just think that we have a variety of ways to put that information out to the public. I mean, we've had over a year of this ongoing stuff, and those who were interested in knowing about that, the developers and their representatives and those who were interested in it, come to the planning commission meetings, come to the council meetings, but people who aren't building, people who aren't developing, people who aren't doing this stuff, I mean, an outreach effort to our entire city, what are you looking at? Maybe are you looking at sending out something like this to every resident so they're all educated? Is that what you're talking about doing?
Hold on.
I mean, I'm not being sarcastic or anything, really. I'm serious because I'd like to know.
Let's ask a question first. We're not in the discussion. You went to the discussion. So our questions are becoming discussion. So does anybody have any questions for staff? No further questions for staff? Okay. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do. Cindy Bidney.
Hi, good evening. Happy Valentine's Day.
Good evening.
Jeff, I'd just like to say you're wrong. People are angry. They don't like what's going on, and they don't understand what you're doing, and your printed papers don't do any good, okay? They want to know. Okay, I'll be in. Thank you for the time to share with you my concerns about what is being planned for our city by your staff. Many believe that it's your plan. Today, you're planning to approve or disapprove future buildings to be built in Grand Terrace. We are really talking about the Barton Road Canal Square, which was the Village Town Square. The governor has given cities and developers the power to fast-track residential housing in the name of increasing housing for the homeless, meaning the developer will not have to obtain your or the Planning Commission's approval for the apartments being planned right next to our neighborhood. So if you approve a 3-story or a 4-story building to look into our neighborhood, you are approving to take away not only our quiet enjoyment, but also our private way of life. An apartment building hotel on Barton Road is not appropriate for the city, and that's what everyone's talking about. You have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the citizens and from developers who build oversized buildings that take away our families' quality of life and reduce the value of our homes. How will you mitigate all those losses? It's up to you. You're the final say. Change the building heights, no more apartments, and to clarify that access to our neighborhood was promised that there would be no access to our neighborhood. Community is very angry, and I think the manager forgot to tell you about that. We did have a meeting with the city manager and the developers, and I'm telling you, they were screaming. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other public comment?
Yes, Mayor. Bobby Forbes.
Bobby Forbes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Hold on a minute. We already closed it, yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Want me to ask it? They'll let you come back. I attended the public workshop that they had in the neighborhood where Cynthia lives, as did Mr. Hussey, I believe. Jeff, I don't remember if you were there. That neighborhood was very upset by what was being proposed. And building something 3 stories right next door to single-story houses, without a doubt, affects the way that these people will live. I had a neighbor 2 lots north that wanted to build a 2-story home, thousands of square feet, and look into 11 properties' backyards that have never had anybody look into their backyards before. We were able to fight that because of some phrase that you just said about infringing upon our privacy, and I don't know what the words were, but I recognized it. And this needs to be addressed. It's not fair to the neighborhood to put a 3- or 4-story building next door to these single-family homes. Something else should be addressed. And there's other areas in my neighborhood that are already zoned multifamily housing, and I'm sure that Aegis or Mr. Moore are going to build something there, but it's not going to be an apartment complex, I don't think. It'll probably be 2-story homes. And there aren't any 2-story homes in that neighborhood. So that changes the dynamics of the neighborhood, whether you sit outside and have coffee in your pajamas and the guy up on the balcony is watching you do it. It's not okay. It needs to be thought out better for the community. It's just not fair to the residents of Grand Terrace. So I haven't recently attended Planning Commission meetings, but y'all need to work together and really think about the community, not just what the developers and the people that are going to make money are doing.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No, Mayor.
Okay, come and ask your question now.
I just wanted some clarification on H number 2 on your agenda.
What was
We're
the
not
question?
on that agenda.
We're not on item H.
Item
She can-
H?
She can come back at.
Yeah, that's, we're not on that one yet. So. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for any further questions or deliberations. Okay, we've closed public comment.
Okay, I have a question. What,
Yeah, go ahead. Go
we
ahead.
seem to have a problem with communication. I have no idea about some meeting or what the topic of the meeting is. And I don't see the Greens group in front of me. So what are we doing here?
The two speakers are conflating two different issues.
Okay.
One is objective design standards for future multifamily housing. The other is a specific project that is still in environmental review and is still being worked on with the planning department. It has not been to planning commission and is not before this body. And they're conflating the two issues.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Henderson.
My comment regarding community education, I should have been more specific maybe in my earlier comments, but the city or the community does not appreciate these two laws that are being imposed by the state on all localities in the state of California. I don't believe that they appreciate the fact that the city's hands are tied as it relates to the implementation of the objective design standards. And so that won't solve the problem in and of itself, but I believe if there's an appreciation that this is imposed by the state through its Housing and Community Development Department, it certainly places it in a different context for our citizens. I've had very few discussions about this concept, but the few discussions I have had relate to why is the city doing this? Why can't the city do something else, X, Y, and Z, instead of A, B, and C? And it's difficult to rationalize the city's position without the person understanding and appreciating what the state is imposing upon all localities in the state of California. So I'll state it again, the Planning Commission hearing or the City Council hearing is not going to get the job done, in my estimation, as it relates to that particular aspect and the context of this discussion. And I think we can do a better job there, and it'll make everyone's lives much easier, but particularly the planning director's life, because he or she is the one that's going to take the hits from initially, and then the manager, and then the council. And so if there's something that we can do to forestall that, to mitigate it, I think we should do it.
Commissioner Robles, you have something?
Yeah, what I wanted to say too is we're doing things very ministerially, and even for myself, I'm not getting the communication of what's going on. You know, the gentleman that was going to build the two-story large home had the zoning for it, and there was an end run by the last city manager. He got the mayor, and they had a community meeting, even though that was going to be on a very near future agenda. So basically, cut this council out of our role. And they decided with the community meeting, you know, what their pass or their run was going to be on the field. Unfortunately, we asked the gentleman to bring it back because he had the zoning for it, and he apparently didn't want all the grief, and my understanding is that he passed away. Now, I lived in a neighborhood in Grand Terrace where I had a single story, and people on each side of me and behind me had a two-story. But it was done in such a way that the people next to me, of course, didn't have any oversight over me, and the people in the back was a cul-de-sac, so the windows were a little bit different. But it seems like we have an issue of Grand Terrace at one time was a horse community, and it's not a horse community anymore, and people want to have that same lifestyle. But we're going to see density because we need it. People need to live somewhere. We can't have everybody move to Utah. I saw something on Twitter where apparently the governor's asked people not to move to Idaho anymore from here. These things, if I'm not understanding all the pieces that are coming together, then how do you expect the community to? And also, this community I've lived in since 1977, and when they built apartments, this was the tenor of the community. They threatened a council member's life. She had a bomb threat, okay? So for your information, you could go to a bar here and people would sit at the bar and talk about how dark it was down there, meaning there were black people that lived in the valley that were gonna start moving to Grand Terrace, and they didn't want that. And, and I ordered a beer, and you know how my beer was sent to me? It was sent to me like this, like here, you Mexican, here's a beer for you. So yeah, you gotta have some communication in this community and communication with the policy board. I need to know when there's concerns in the community that Ms. Biddy has and what kind of, Bidney, excuse me, and what's going on. This is all over the place. So we need to have something.
Commissioner Allen?
So, thanks, and once you, not you, him, once you explain that the second time, I totally agree with what you're saying. And if I remember right, or when I was on the Planning Commission and even later on, that all the residences in the area surrounding the development in that zone that I think is 1,000 feet around are sent a letter from the city describing what's going to happen. And I remember that. And then, apparently some people are getting the education, like Ms. Bidney said, and Bobby said that they had the hearings and people were here that were interested. And I think that the people that are being affected directly by it, like within that 1,000-foot area, they're getting the information, hopefully, at least I believe that's the procedure. And I think that's good. And I think that it's good that we offer all the information and education that a person could ever want on the subject available to them if they want to come and get it and receive it, about how the state's requiring us to do this and all that. I think that we've done sufficiently in hosting meetings to explain it, because those who wanted to come came. And I think having it available and ready for all the others, electronically, paper versions at City Hall, on the desk, any way they want it, and then come and get the information. I think I agree with you there on that. But it was this whole thing about continually hosting all these workshops, that I went to some of them, and, yeah. So that's what I was coming at with you there. I do agree about the point about needing to get the information out there so that people understand and they're not angry at us and think that we don't care, that, we want something they don't want,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
For commissioners?
Just recently, the council had an experience with the residents living on or around Griffith Park. And we've heard from Ms. Forbes that the view that she likes is the view that she wants to retain. But unless she purchases that view, she can't prevent me, the property owner, from doing what the zoning code allows for that property. And I must tell you that many, many citizens in Grand Terrace feel like they own that view. And they object to anything that might infringe upon that view. So I appreciate what the staff has done and the work that's been done and the workshops that have been conducted so far. All I'm saying is that in my experience, that typically is insufficient simply because of the fact that most of the people who have an opinion, they're not developers. They're not property owners. So I'm fine. Just don't build next to me. If you want to build down in Colton or across town or on the other side of La Crosse, maybe I'm okay with that. But I think we've all can appreciate even something that's relatively benign, in my view, the hotel has generated significant back and forth in the community.
NIMBYism?
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I can interject, it sounds like even the council is trying to work through some of the details, and this is a complicated and detailed issue before us. So if you guys are okay, we can come back with a workshop, an educational workshop, to sit down and really break this down into the nuts and bolts of what's there, to and have people that are interested so that they're aware of what's going on, and then we can bring this back before you if that works for you.
Commissioner Robles.
What I would appreciate is all the various tracks of what we're doing globally, and then how they piece together. And then for folks to understand that where we're at in different phases, like we're not, or I am not aware of, because I'm not following the Planning Commission, but I don't think we have a hotel proposal in front of us yet. Okay, so we need to, I don't want to sit in another meeting and it's kind of like we went with the cannabis thing and I had to sit through a long presentation of the same thing. So, something global and something to help people understand where we're at on things, that we're not entertaining at this point a hotel. And if we were entertaining a hotel, what are the property rights of that person to the zoning? Those kinds of things.
So we're going a little off topic. And bringing projects before you prior to environmental review, prior to even the discussion with the developer in the development process, there's a lot of negotiating that goes on long before it ever gets to Planning Commission or to, so, a developer comes in and says, I want to build some, most of the time, some ridiculous thing. And then we come back and say, all right, you need to have so much parking, so much, and start laying this out. And to have these things come before the body that's going to make the decision on them, before we've created that thing you're making a decision on, is not the right path.
I don't remember talking about that.
So
I'm not asking for that.
So some of the things that have happened in the past is there have been presentations about, oh, this great thing is going to come, whatever it may be, the hotel.
Yeah.
And then there's a There's a negotiation phase, a modeling shaping phase, and in that phase, there isn't much information that can come out. So wild speculation runs rampant. And then when we finally get to the deliberative phase, a lot of decisions are already made. So, and I think that's what you're seeing with the hotel. And we're trying to avoid that. On a city manager to council level, we can certainly make sure that, give you a global perspective of what's going on. And we're due for that.
Yeah.
And I owe you that. So that certainly makes sense. On doing it in a deliberative forum, I think is the wrong place, because we're dropping things out there that have not had a chance to be shaped and baked to what they should be and are ready for discussion.
Yeah, like on the San Bernardino Transportation Agency and the Southern California Association of Governments, I've gotten on some committees. And there's things that take 20 years to do, and they're very long-term. But what I have to commend that they do is they have social media that says, you know, these things. And sometimes I get a little bit where I need a refreshment. I'll look to Instagram and go, okay, that's where we're at on this project. And I know we have staffing constraints, but, you know, it's a lot, long-term projects, a lot of the same information just running over and over again. And it might be helpful.
May I add some clarification about the objective design standards? Currently, our municipal code does have different zonings, and some of the zonings allowed for multifamily development. On our Barton Road specific plan, we also have zoning that allows mixed-use development with housing components. As it stands right now, our municipal code, we do not have every project would have to come through a discretionary review process through the Planning Commission. And what often happens is that developers want to give us a project that is not of high quality and high design. It doesn't have four-sided architecture, it lacks interest, it doesn't have enough materials and articulation that we want to see. We want to see high quality design here in the city. What the objective design standards is going to do for us is to establish those standards. And the only way that we can do it through the state with this legislation is to make objective requirements, objective design standard requirements that are clear, that the developer can come and meet those requirements and really have a ministerial approval. But in the end, we're going to end up with a project that is very nice, that is consistent, that is something that we want to see. And so on those previous workshops that we had, that was part of the discussion. Now that we work with Mr. Arambula, which is our consultant, he was helping us to create even additional requirements that we didn't have before. We added requirements for EV parking. We have our art landscaping ordinance, which was adopted, and we have incorporated those. We want to see art pieces there. Our city manager also helped with a lot of the concepts for adding fencing. We add also a graph in the proposal that has amenities. So we want our multifamily projects to have amenities, because we want to make sure that depending on the size of the project, we are going to implement amenities proportionate. This could be, having a barbecue, but it might be a pool. It depends on how big the development is, and we have laid out those requirements. So this is a really positive thing for the city. It's a positive, ordinance for the city. We are already looking to every avenue to make sure that the end result for a project that goes through the objective design standards is going to be a high-quality project. Now, the option for a project that doesn't want to follow these requirements is going to go through the discretionary review process, but by adopting these standards, now we have set up the standard that we want for the city. Now, the Planning Commission has seen these objective design standards, and this is going to be our new standard. If you don't meet, pretty much we're going to be asking something very similar through the discretionary review process.
So and to jump on real quick, and then we'll stop interrupting your deliberation. If I would be very happy if we can table this. We will do an educational workshop for you as a group, as well as anybody else that's interested. As Heidi said, this is a really complicated ordinance. There's a lot of pieces. And as you remember from our workshop back in June, I think it took us an hour and a half just to kind of work through the bullet points of what all these pieces are and how they fit together. And maybe it's time to do that again. So as staff, we would be happy to set this aside, do that education, then come back and when we all have a better grounding in this, attack it again.
Well, before, I remember the workshop and I remember all these pieces, but I want to applaud your work that you've done and bringing the consultant that you brought on. That's just, I think, the best workmanship that we can ever hope for. You've really exceeded, the bar. The way you explain things well, and I think if the public understood that this is what the state's doing, this is what we're doing to make it a product that is something that would be the best fit, would be very helpful. And then all these other pieces that are floating around. So thank you, Heidi, very much.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a closing statement, then we're going to move forward because we just spent a lot of time on this. And I think we went way beyond what the scope was. As my fellow, well, I guess they're commissioners right now, but council members, Heidi, you did a good job, and I appreciate all your hard work. And it's a rough area to be in, And speaking, I don't want to say experience. My sister did it, the senior planner, and all the rules and regulations that you are forced to know by the state. And this AB 35, and a lot. I could go on and on about all these SBs and ASBs, what the state's forcing us to do nowadays. And you think about it. We just came from the League of Cities. And a lot of this stuff is because of Northern California. We have the more property here, but are we short on housing? Yes. Is it going to be affordable? I don't know. We're going to have to keep on fighting that. It goes in cycles. As Commissioner Henderson said, and he nailed it right on the spot, paying for a view. That's one of the biggest things. Because when I did go there, a fly on the wall, I heard it's going to take away my view. And my view got taken away too when they built the rest of the homes, two-story homes in my neighborhood. And I didn't buy those properties. But I understand too, you don't want people looking in on you. And it's unfortunate, Barton Road has always been our business road, our business plan. I hear from residents time and time again, they want more sheriffs. How are we going to get more sheriffs? We have to bring in development. We have to have this Measure M passed for that hotel. That means 200 extra people in this city want that. Yes, do they live there? Probably not. They probably don't live in the neighborhood, but they want more sheriffs. So how do we as a council decide that? What do we build? My biggest thing I heard that we were the only city in California that denied a Lowe's because we didn't want people driving in our city. If we had a Lowe's, what would our tax base be? So I could go on what if, what we can't do. But the council is held by the SB. We went through a big workshop on that. We put protocols out there for water meters and everything else to help fight some of this, to have 7,500 square foot lot, then you're going to have an 800 square foot house in the backyard. People buy homes for the bigger lots. So we could go on and on about this. But I do like, we do need, and that's the biggest thing here, is public information on what's going on. Public needs to know. 2 people here from that neighborhood came tonight. I'm sure they wanted a lot more people, and then I'm sure you posted that. Do they come? No. But when you go to their area, they'll come out, but they don't know the whole story. But you have 2 people that are fighting for that neighborhood, and we listen to it. It's hard. It's hard to make that decision. It's hard when the state has a gun to your head and we have to comply by the state. I don't like a lot of this stuff. I think, the state should just let the cities run some of their things, but we could go on and on about that. So we'll table this until further discussion. Thank you, sir, for coming out here, your presentation. Heidi, thank you for doing a great job. It's a hard job, and I know the residents come out there and you're the face that they want to look at, and also the developers and stuff, you're caught in the middle, and you're doing everything you can, and we're proud of you and the work that you're done, okay? So we'll go ahead and table this and we'll move on to the other item. And that is unfinished business. Unfunded FPEB liability, strategic list. Cynthia Clayton, you want to go ahead and give us our...
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Christine Clayton, Finance Director. So this is just an overview of our unfunded OPEB liability. The City of Grand Terrace provides certain medical benefits to eligible retirees. To be eligible to receive the benefits, retirees must have retired directly from the city under CalPERS with a service or disability requirement. Such benefits are commonly referred to as other post-employment benefits, OPEB. At present, public agencies have two options for covering OPEB costs. One option is referred to as pay-as-you-go, where an employer makes the required insurance premium payments for its retirees as those premiums are due out of its current year operating budget. This is the city's current method, and we are trying to get away from this method. So the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB 75, requires agencies to account for and disclose their OPEB costs for all active and retired employees. As of the most recent valuation, June 2019, the city's net OPEB liability is $1,964,307 for benefits already earned. At its meeting on June 14th, 2022, Council indicated they would like to further explore the use of a Section 115 trust to address the city's unfunded liabilities. This report to the City Council is a recommendation to set up Section 115 trust to better plan for and manage the city's OPEB unfunded liability. At its meeting of September 13th, 2022, Council approved the pre-funding agreement and elected to pre-fund the other post-employment benefits, OPEB, through California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust, fund administered through the California Public Retirees Retirement System, CalPERS, with an initial investment of $100,000 from the sale of the fire station. Council requested staff to bring back the 3 strategies for risk. And this table shows the 3 strategies. Strategy 1 is on, as you can see. It has bigger percentage in the global equity. Strategy 2 has a 40% in global equity. Strategy 3 has 22% in global equity. And you can see the various percentages in each of the categories. And I am before you today. Staff recommends that City Council approve Strategy 2 for funding the other post-employment benefits, OPEB, through the California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust Fund and administered through the California Public Employees Retirement System. Any questions?
Does the council have any questions for staff? Councilman Henderson, do you have a question? Councilman Robles, you have a question?
No, sir.
We were wondering about when we, I guess when we sold some assets, were any of this going to this project here or this effort?
There was $100,000 from the sale of the fire station that was going to this.
Thank you.
So you're asking that the council approve Strategy 2?
Strategy 2.
Okay.
I would make that motion.
I have a motion for Councilman Henderson,
Second.
second from Councilman Allen. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Business none. Request for future agenda items by council under this section.
Excuse me, Mayor, could you please turn your microphone
Oh,
on?
I thought I had it on.
Thank you.
All right. So just click it, my voice, activate mic, is that how? All right, under this section, we're on item H. Pursue the requirements of the Brown Act, no items may be considered other than those listed below. Councilmember Jeff Allen, you have a couple requests. So
Oh,
number
I
one,
was
you want
gonna
to
pull
explain to
those.
us? Councilmember Allen?
I forgot I was going to pull those. Oh, well, but
No, do you want to pull? I mean, you don't have to. Do you want to move forward on these?
Can we discuss your stuff when we ever have our workshop on,
Do you want to bring it back for later?
what did you say?
could we have those discussions whenever we have our, what do you call it? Work plan?
What, on these two items?
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know if they're related to a discussion on objective design standards,
No,
you know?
no.
So I don't know
Aren't
if
we
that,
going to
how
have
you
a
mean.
visioning workshop where we have a vision for what we're going to do for this year?
Oh, you mean when we update our vision?
Yeah,
Our 20,
yeah.
20
And we
and 20.
establish a work plan.
At some point in the future, we will have an update of the city vision, yes.
Okay, so do you want to pull these, or do you want to wait and maybe bring it to the workshop? It's up to you. If you want to bring it to agenda items and have staff work on it, or do you want to?
So we'll go forward with it tonight, and if there's no second, then we'll go there, whatever.
So you want to make a motion for discuss at large elections by district elections? That's your first one? And then the second one's discussing transition from general law city to charter city? Is that
That's
what you-
correct.
All right. Do you have a motion for both for future agendas? Do I have a second on any of those?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Henderson. Please vote.
This is the first one or both of them?
I would recommend doing them separately.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Vote for the first one. I'm sorry, for at-large election. Thank you.
my button's not working. That goes.
Motion passes with council members Allen, Henderson, and Mayor Hussey voting yes. Councilmember Robles votes no.
Okay, and item number 2, from discussion from general law city to charter city. Please vote.
Motion passes with council members Allen, Henderson, and Mayor Hussey voting yes, and Councilmember Robles votes no.
Okay, well, let me ask the city attorney a question. I think
I don't even.
somebody had a question on item H, so can the public come up to and ask that question right now?
Yes, they may. It is on the agenda.
Ms. Bentley, yeah. So city attorney, can you tell us what the clarifications from general law city to charter city?
Yes, I mean, this very simple way. A charter is like a constitution for our individual city. Yes, that's basically the equivalent of what a charter is. General law city, we basically default to all state laws where applicable. A charter can possibly deviate or deviate from the state laws in certain circumstances. So it basically creates its own governance.
And all laws?
On some laws, yes.
So we would be independent?
We would not be independent, it would just be a different method of governance.
Are other cities doing this?
Yes, there are other charter cities out there.
Okay, well, that's what we're going to do. It's going to come to agenda, and then those questions will be asked and look at the future things. So it'll be more of a clarification, and they go in depth about it. So that's what staff hours are going to be used for. All right? All right, you're welcome. All right, well, finally, city communication, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The mayor and I attended League of California Cities Academy for new mayors and new council members. It was an excellent seminar conducted by league representatives and league moderators and city staff from applicable jurisdictions. Three of the more important sessions involved harassment, sexual harassment, discrimination, and a second involved ethics, and the third, which I found to be most productive, was effective council-manager relations. The two people presenting for that particular session was the Mayor Pro Tem and the city manager from the city of Redlands. It was excellent, well-attended, with 2.5 days of significant conference activity, going from session to session with minor breaks, but it was one that generated a lot of enthusiasm and a tremendous amount of benefit. I introduced Mayor Hussey to the mayor of Apple Valley, who was elected to the city council when I worked for the town of Apple Valley. And I did it for the specific purpose of showing he's a 21-year member of the town of Apple Valley Town Council, and he attends the new mayor, new council seminar every year because of the value he attaches to it and the benefits that accrue to attendees. There's a significant amount of information on new laws that are passed and that are implemented, and you hear it firsthand from, in some cases, the drafters of those pieces of correspondence, or lobbyists who have for and against positions that are beneficial to hear from the city's perspective. It started January 31st and ended on February 3rd. I would strongly encourage all of my colleagues and staff to attend future sessions because the benefit is that significant in my view. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. Councilman Allen?
Thanks, thanks, Mayor. On February 8th, I attended the Grand Terrace Chamber of Commerce meeting, and at that meeting, we received a presentation from Eric and Priscilla Santillian, who are the owners of the Grocery Outlet Supermarket here in Grand Terrace. And it was a presentation they offered about their business and how it's grown since opening 3 years ago. And I don't know if you folks remember this or not, sitting up here on the dais, but Eric and Priscilla opened Grocery Outlet 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. And to say that they were a lifesaver for our community, I think would be an understatement. I don't think anybody would argue it because they, provided so many, they were open during the pandemic and they have grown and been successful. And so I just want to say I'm very glad that they chose Grand Terrace for their store because that's what they did. They had an option and they chose Grand Terrace. Later that morning, I also went to the Colton Joint Unified School District Community Cabinet meeting. And at that meeting, Dr. Miranda, who's the superintendent, he talked with us about the CJUSD design plan that they've come out with. And the idea behind this being that there are 3 priorities that are identified: equity, professional learning, and professionalism, and the strategies and action steps that are going to guide them in improving in all these areas. And then we had a presentation from the Department of Public Health on childhood obesity and also on the opioid and fentanyl crisis. And Dr. Michael Ziguera, who's the director of the Department of Public Health for the county, was the one who gave the presentation on the opioid fentanyl crisis. And what I learned from him is that the fentanyl toxicity is the #1 independently identified cause of death for kids age 15 to 17 in San Bernardino County. #1 cause of death for our children. So anyway, he talked about, you know, and I mentioned this to the mayor, he talked about rainbow fentanyl, this epidemic of multicolored little pills coming across the border from Mexico that is what so many of our children are overdosing on. And between 2019 and 2021, there was a 109% increase in the average monthly overdose deaths among the adolescents, the children in our communities from illicitly manufactured fentanyl. Those deaths increased 182% for that same age group. You know, so this is truly an epidemic. I spoke with Dr. Sequeiro after the meeting, and I invited him to come to the city council and give us a presentation also. And I mentioned to the city manager, and I think he's going to arrange it so that we'll have a special presentation in the future on the opioid fentanyl crisis from the Department of Public Health. And they're also going to add a presentation on the gun violence epidemic that's taking so many lives also. And you know, the end result, what we're hoping for is, like with Dr. Seguera, he was talking about how, you know, we see these AEDs mounted on the walls all over the place for people to help save the lives of someone having a heart attack. Well, there should be a Narcan kit right there beside it. There should be Narcan in all the classrooms of all the schools, and no parent should be ostracized for going and asking for a dose of Narcan to keep at their house in case if their kids are having a party, because you just don't know what's going on. You just don't know. So anyway, the last presentation we had was from the social workers who have created these wellness centers at each of the high schools in our school district, and I got a chance to talk afterwards with the gentleman. His name is Robert Harris, who manages the wellness center at Grand Terrace High School, and he talked about how successful this is in reaching out to the children of that high school who haven't had an anchor and have drifted, and it has proved so successful in helping them with their academics and with their social life and their successes. And I applaud the school district for bringing these wellness centers into our high schools. And I thank Mr. Harris for stepping up and providing that service. And so with that, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Allen. Councilman Robles?
Okay. So on February 1st, I attended the San Bernardino County Transportation Agency Board meeting. On the 9th, the Transit Metro Studies session. And on February 2nd, the SCAG Housing Committee and Economic Committee. And on February 25th, the Investment Ad Hoc Committee. Some of the things that are on the near horizon: Alabama's supposed to be finished. Cedar Bloomington expansion had a groundbreaking. The Mount Vernon Bridge is supposed to be done by 2024. The Investment Ad Hoc Committee, they're really doing a good job at the transit agency. It's a very conservative portfolio. And it's good that they welcome input and oversight on that. The SCAG Housing and Economic Committee has some very long-range planning that's very similar to what we were discussing on the objective standards. There was a number of cities that were sharing their concepts in progress. My husband went to the Sweet Life Bakery, and apparently there were a couple of homeless people that are sleeping there regularly, and the sheriff was going to look it out. And then my husband also told me that the mayor had gotten some complaints about one at the donut shop. So the issue with my representation on these is I'm kind of curious about what kind of reporting you would like, since it's kind of like when I would hear the reports, if you read the paper and you see all these things, you know about a lot of these projects. So repeating them here is, kind of taking time. So I was thinking, would it be appropriate to have maybe every 6 months some kind of comprehensive report on what's going on? Would that be something that the council would appreciate? Okay. And I went home from the last meeting, and my husband goes, "How can you be home when you're still on TV?" And I looked, and I was confused because I wore a burgundy blouse in that meeting, but it wasn't the same blouse, people. Really, it wasn't. It was another one. And so apparently we're showing a previous meeting, and I don't know if I confused people from wearing the same color blouse, so I'll break it up. And then this really funny thing, because Ken Henderson joined us again, his wife goes by Cecilia Lopez Henderson, and we all worked together at the county, and there were all these women with their hyphenated surnames. Because my maiden name was Rodriguez, I was always shy about using it. But I'm going to start using it. So I'm going to go by Sylvia Rodriguez Robles, because I want to, it's a homage to my father, who passed away when I was 3 years old, so I want to use it in this forum. And also I have a sister-in-law whose name's Sylvia Robles, and poor her, because she was that for 5 years, and then I showed up. But, you would be surprised how people get mixed up. People think that I live in Beaumont when she lives in Beaumont. And I understand, how can I live in Beaumont when I'm on the Grand Terrace City Council? So it's kind of just to kind of clarify things. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. All the way from Beaumont. So, yes, on the homeless, it was asked, what can we do? That's the thing about Facebook, everybody wants to put on there. You need to call the sheriffs, especially if you feel like you're a victim or if you feel threatened. Call the sheriffs. And if the sheriffs don't take care of you, then you'll call the council, and we'll make sure the sheriffs do. But the sheriffs will take care of it. We're pretty proactive on the homeless. We are not immune from the homelessness. Like I said, it's a state issue. If you believe it or not, a lot of the homelessness problems here, they have relatives or somebody living here in Grand Terrace that they know. All right? But you see it, do not give them money, panhandle. If you feel threatened, if they made a threat to you, please call the Sheriff's Department. Okay? And then on that, Councilmember Henderson's right. It is good to go to those new meetings to learn about the new stuff. Everything's always changing, with the state. So it was very informed. They kept you there for 3 days straight, and when you're bad back sitting there all day, it hurts. But we have to do it. We have to learn. And the reason why those classes are so, we represent you, and we don't want the city to get sued by the choices that we do something wrong. Because first thing everybody would do is like, well, I was never informed or taught that, and they get away. So we don't want to waste taxpayers' money by getting sued. On a sadder note, February 9th, I did announce out there that the parents, they had a meeting at the middle school for awareness for kids, for parents for kids on drugs or trying to bring in drugs to their household. It's kind of sad, only 3 parents showed up. But you do hear, well, what about this, what about that? So 3 parents took the time out and showed up for it. The gentleman was very informative. I like to see maybe if we could get him on during our community days, because he had props there, and it showed those fake cans, people use to hide money and stuff, where kids are hiding their drugs in there, the fake water bottles. Parents are oblivious. They say, oh, my son's keeping his, I don't know why he's got a soda can in there, but they hide things in there. So parents, you have to be proactive on this. You can't be their friend. You're their parent. You have to make sure that they're doing everything right. The thing is, a lot of parents rely on the school systems to take care of the problems. It's too hard for them to do that. So you have to be proactive. And the reason why I'm saying this hit home, I had a coworker, and he asked me to share this His son just passed away from a fentanyl overdose. He's 27 years old. He was that child actor, Austin Major, who died of an overdose in a homeless shelter. So he was a childhood star in NYPD Blue, and he made wrong decisions his whole life. And the dad shared with me that he wished he was more involved. So fentanyl is very deadly. You could get on a pencil, just a couple drops on that pencil lead can kill you. They are lacing it in marijuana. They're lacing it in drinks. They're lacing it in snow cones. People are evil out there. They'll lace it. They'll do stuff. So when you hear things about, there's community members out there trying to make other people aware of what's going on, take the time out, an hour of your day, and go and get educated. Now, that's the biggest thing. So, I don't know what to tell my friend. I just pray for him. He said he wished he could turn back the clock and do different things, but he couldn't. But you have to be proactive on this. It's a dangerous thing. It'd be nice if we do have Narcan. I think parents, should have it. I mean, it's better safe than sorry to take it. There's a lot of things. I know law enforcement, firefighters can deal with it too on, second response on it and, inhale it. It's a dangerous, dangerous drug. So he wanted me to share that with the public. And it's, like I said, a young man, you could Google him, Austin Major, and he died of a fentanyl overdose, child actor. So I'm doing what I can to spread the word on that. But I want to thank all my colleagues and, their input, and, thank the residents who came out here tonight. I know it's hard, to come up here and speak on the podium sometime, and you want a lot of what-if questions, and there's a lot of things, it could be hard decisions here to make. We all live in Grand Terrace. We want the best for our community, too. We all want more sheriffs. It's a nice little safe area, but what do? So thank you, City Manager, for going to bring that back to, have a more public workshop on there. The more education that we have, the better we know. And with that, I'm going to close our comments. And City Manager, you have any communication?
Yeah, real quick, we have the Wingstop is just about nearing end of construction on Barton Road, so they should be opening up shortly. You've seen some work there kind of right next door to it. We demoed that building for the new Starbucks that they will begin construction on shortly as well. Starbucks right next door to Wingstop.
I didn't know that.
So
I don't know anything.
we are also proceeding with the property sale for the Dutch Brothers on Barton Road as well. And then actually the property owner, we worked with them to demolition those old metal buildings that were attracting a lot of homeless on Barton Road down by La Crosse. Those are gone now. Part of what we've seen in the last week or two with the homeless is those buildings are gone. That's where they're at. Now they're kind of scattered in the wind, and we have to kind of work with them to get those guys off the street and into resources into someplace else. So you've broken up where they're hiding. Now they're out in the daylight, and we're going to get them out to where they can get some help. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I close on that, Lieutenant Lane, do you have any recommendation if somebody comes in contact with a homeless that might be a little bit combative, or what's your recommendation and who they call for this?
Well, yeah, first of all, I would say, is if you approach a homeless person or somebody you believe to be homeless who's maybe panhandling in front of a local business, you already said it, but keep the change is the slogan of our campaign to try to discourage that type of activity happening in front of the businesses. And I sort of akin that to, I come to work every single day because I love what I do, but I get paid to do it. And in many cases, those people get paid to go sit in front of those stores and take handouts. And, while I admire, people in the community, residents' willingness to give, it's not doing much to help the problem. So that's a personal decision that they'll have to make. But certainly, anybody who appears to be agitated, appears to be, maybe in their opinion, having some sort of a mental breakdown of some sort, or have some impairment, who may also be acting in a way that's threatening. Certainly avoid them, stay away from them. Certainly call 911 if there seems to be a confrontation that may occur, or sees a confrontation occurring with somebody else. It's not anybody's job but ours, the Sheriff's Department, to go deal with those people. We have the tools, we have the training to best and most effectively take care of those people and get them the help that they need. And I wouldn't encourage anybody to try to get into a fight with somebody. People get hurt that way, and that doesn't solve or help anybody's problem. So absolutely, call the Sheriff's Department.
Well, I know you guys are busy, but can the sheriff do a courtesy call around our businesses first thing in the morning if a homeless person is sleeping there, so our business owners don't have to put up with it and, avoid a confrontation for that, if they have the time, and make it like a routine?
I can certainly direct our people to make a sweep, maybe 6 a.m. or so, and just kind of drive through some of the shopping centers and take a look for that. Again, that'll be dependent on calls. Calls happen 24 hours a day, so if they have the ability and the time to do that, yeah, certainly they can do that.
I appreciate it. Now, I understand the priority calls, but at least, I'm trying to, so our businesses don't have to deal with it and the patriots don't have to deal with it. And hopefully, I know our HOPE program offers them resources, and hopefully one day they'll take the resources. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Okay, so we have a closed session tonight, conference with legal counsel, anticipation of litigation pursued to Government Code Section 54956.9B, significant exposure, legitimate pursuit of Government Code Section 56.9B, number of cases 1. So you guys probably won't be back, because I know some of you had to go buy Valentine's gifts. But I appreciate everybody coming out, and happy Valentine's. God bless. We'll reconvene from closed session. We're at conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, pursue the Government Code Section 54956.9. The council was given directive on that. City Attorney, you have anything to add?
Yes, just information provided, no direction, no action taken. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and adjourn. The next regular city council meeting will be held Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on a future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the city clerk's office, and requests will be processed in accordance with council procedures. I want to thank my council members for the good insight and your great work, and happy Valentine's Day.